tonight on One News. Rescuers still in search of the boy who fell into a river in Caloocan after coming across a live power cable while wading in flood water. The Department of Health expects a surge in dengue and leptospirosis cases after days of non-stop rains. And police and militant groups prepare for the staging of a huge protest against President Duterte's State of the Nation address on Monday. Good evening. The Department of Health expects an upsurge in the cases of dengue and leptospirosis following days of non-stop rains. Health officials also reminds the public to avoid wading through floodwaters and to take precautions against the said diseases. Aiko Miguel tells us why.
The Department of Health sees spike in the number of dengue and leptospirosis cases following the series of downpours that caused flooding in some areas. According to Health Secretary Francisco Duque III, reported leptospirosis cases has reached 623 from January 1 to July 14 this year with 68 deaths, while dengue cases rose to 8,223, which is 17% higher than the reported cases in the same period last year.
Search and recovery continues for the boy who was electrocuted and fell off in the Tulyahan River on Tuesday night. According to the boy's mother, 11-year-old John Darwin Vargas was seen wading through the floodwater in Barangay 164, Caloocan City at around 5 p.m. when he accidentally came across a live power cable and fell off into the river.
Punta sa dun sa baba na may baha. Ngayon nakapatong po siya sa isang semento, doon sa may bahay. Nag-ground po siya, nahulog siya. Parang nawalan po siya ng malay dahil sa pagkakaano ng kuryente.
Rescuers and barangay personnel are still searching for the boy, which they believe had been drowned by the strong river current.
Nasis po namin si ma'am kasi may tumawag po sa kanya na kamag-anak na dito daw po namin matatagpuan yung bata na nakalutang. Ngayon, naghingi kami ng tulong doon sa rescuer dito. Wala naman daw development na meron silang na-rescue.
Following the incident, other families near Tulyahan River have started to evacuate to safer grounds, realizing the danger of staying near the river, especially during rainy season.
Kaya karamihan sa iba, pinapalikas lalo na nasa tabi. Katulad doon sa amin sa na may tabi ng ganito na tulyahan, talaga pong pinapalikas namin yan. Nagmo-monitor po kami sa Barangay 164, alert po kaming lahat.
Parents of John Darwin are calling on the public to notify them, the authorities, or the barangay office number 330-5443 should they find the boy or his body. Bernard Dadis, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
The Department of Health expects an upsurge in the cases of dengue and leptospirosis following days of non-stop rains. Health officials also remind the public to avoid wading through floodwaters and to take precautions against the said diseases. Aiko Miguel tells us why.
The Department of Health sees spike in the number of dengue and leptospirosis cases following the series of downpours that caused flooding in some areas. According to Health Secretary Francisco Duque III, reported leptospirosis cases has reached 623 from January 1 to July 14 this year with 68 deaths, while dengue cases rose to 8,223, which is 17% higher than the reported cases in the same period last year.
This rainy season of the last 2-3 days, we expect again an upsurge in the number of lepto and dengue cases. It's always alarming if we have deaths, so certainly because we have reported deaths.
DOH has previously declared an outbreak on leptospirosis in 29 villages in Metro Manila. Most of the cases were reported in Quezon City, which has reached 201. In order to prevent any increase in the said number and to make the residents aware of the symptoms and prevention of dengue and leptospirosis, Duque visited some flooded villages earlier. He particularly went to Barangay Apolonio Samson in Balintawak, Quezon City, where he also distributed doxycycline to those who have open wounds and waded through floodwaters like Ruben Abad. He says he has diabetes but he can totally avoid walking through floodwaters that submerged their home in the past days.
Humingi akong gamot kasi sugat ko dyan eh. Antes mayroong gamot, inom ka muna, maunahan mo na siyang gamot, mawas out yung leptos.
Secretary Duque also reminds the public to seek medical consultation when symptoms appear instead of just taking doxycycline, as this may lead to antimicrobial resistance.
Kasi kung di naman nalusong sa baha, wala rin epekto naman. Mahirap lang, baka magkaroon pa ng antimicrobial resistance, which is something that we would like to avoid.
Duque further advises the public to seek a doctor's advice on the correct antibiotic to use because doxycycline is not suitable to be taken by everyone, such as pregnant women. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Monsoon rains will continue over areas of Luzon tomorrow. Leslie Lungboan is at the UNTV Weather Center to tell us why. Yes, Leslie?
Yes, good evening. The low-pressure area east of northern Cagayan has developed into a tropical depression and was named Inday. At 3 p.m. today, the center of the tropical depression was located at 755 kilometers east of Basco, Batanes, with maximum sustained winds of 60 kilometers per hour and gustiness of up to 75 kilometers per hour. It moves eastward at 25 kilometers per hour. Forecast shows Inday may intensify into a tropical storm in the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, the southwest monsoon enhanced by Inday will bring monsoon rains over Ilocos Region, Cordillera Administrative Region, Cagayan Valley, Bataan, and Zambales. Occasional rains will also be experienced over Metro Manila and the rest of Luzon, while Visayas and Mindanao will have fair weather. Gale warning is raised over the eastern seaboard of northern Luzon and the eastern and western seaboards of central Luzon. According to Pag-asa, temperature in Metro Manila tomorrow will range from 24 to 29 degrees Celsius, 17 to 19 degrees Celsius in Baguio City, 25 to 32 degrees Celsius in Metro Cebu, and 26 to 33 degrees Celsius in Metro Davao. Tomorrow, the sun is expected to rise at 5:36 in the morning. That's the weather forecast. Back to the studio.
Thank you so much, Leslie Limboan, reporting at the UNTV Weather Center. Meanwhile, the local government of Puerto Galera assures it has taken measures to address the water crisis experienced in most of its villages. However, it may take months before water supply can return to normal. Here's why from Victor Cosare.
Residents in Puerto Galera, Oriental Mindoro are lamenting the insufficient water supply they are currently experiencing. The local government has earlier declared a state of calamity to enable them to utilize funds to deliver water to villages suffering water crisis. Based on a report released by Waterworks System Office, the water level at the dam in Barangay Baclayan has dropped to critical level due to high temperatures during the last dry season. The town of Puerto Galera requires 10,000 cubic meters of water supply per day. However, only 4,100 cubic meters are currently being supplied. This means 60% or equivalent to 22,000 residents are not receiving water supply. Local authorities say they are already taking measures to address the problem, like building storage tanks worth 9 million pesos, which will be sourced from the Calamity Fund. However, the project may take 3 months to be completed.
We have also to prepare everything. So, the municipal engineer was asked by the Sangguniang Bayan member if how long will it take, and the municipal engineer answered that probably 3 months time we will be able to finish the program of work.
But some residents say the local government should provide other solutions to the water crisis while they await the completion of the storage tanks.
Ayun pong ang mga bata po minsan ay hindi po nakakapasok sa eskwelahan. Dahil unang-una po yung pong aming binibiling tubig ay sapat lamang po sa panggamit at pangluto at sa panghugas ng plato.
The local tourism industry might also suffer slumping tourist arrivals due to the water shortage.
Pag nawala ang tourism sa Puerto Galera, walang buhay. Wala kaming agriculture, wala kaming niyugan. Makikita ninyo, wala kaming, ang source lang talaga ng buhay ng tao dito ay sa turismo. At ang turismo ay nakasalalay sa supply ng tubig.
The local government at present has provided a schedule for the house-to-house delivery of water to affected areas. Victor Cosare, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Police meets with the militant groups to discuss their plan to mount a huge protest as President Rodrigo Duterte goes to Congress for his annual State of the Nation address on Monday. The militants want to hold this year's rally along Commonwealth Avenue instead of in IBP Road in Quezon City. Monokson explains why in this report.
The preparation for the third State of the Nation address of President Rodrigo Duterte on July 23 is now in full swing. Earlier, officials of the militant groups who are set to hold massive rallies on Monday met with the National Capital Region Police Office to tackle the security measures and the protest area limitations to ensure orderly and peaceful assembly. As agreed by the police and the protesters, the rally will be held near the St. Peter's Church along Commonwealth Avenue. Militants chose this area as it is wider than the IBP Road, which served as the protest venue during last year's SONA. A huge stage will be mounted here for the anti-SONA program, which will start at 3 in the afternoon. But the demonstrators will begin to march an hour before and will disperse at past 5:30 in the evening. But the manager of a call center building in the area is opposing the plan as it will disrupt their operations.
Siguro mag-adjust lang ng konti para lang hindi masyadong sensitive sa sounds or ingay yung sa call centers. True voice kasi most of all of the time.
Napakahalaga na sa araw na ito, marinig din yung boses ng mga nasagasaan na agrabyado ng administrasyong ito. So, maikling panahon lang naman po yan ng inconvenience na yan.
The militants also asked the police to maintain a distance from the protest area. The PNP is set to deploy more than 7,000 personnel on the day of the SONA. It will also send its Civil Disturbance Management Group instead of placing barbed wires and container vans near the protest area to ensure the protesters will abide by the set limitations.
Nasa pag-uusap at nasa agreement ang magandang pagdaraos ng SONA natin at I'm very much confident na yun ang mangyari. But just the same, we are prepared.
The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, meanwhile, will open a zipper lane along Commonwealth Avenue to manage the expected traffic congestion. Vehicles traveling in the northbound lane from WC Home Depot may traverse the zipper lane. Those going to IBP Road may exit at Leader Restaurant, while those going to Fairview may exit at Sandigan Bayan. The zipper lane will be implemented at noon on July 23. Mon Hokson, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
President Rodrigo Duterte will rehearse his State of the Nation address in Malacanang on Sunday. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque and Special Assistant to the President Bongo confirmed that the Chief Executive will be in Manila on July 22 to rehearse the delivery of his report to the nation prior to Monday's event. Malacanang has mentioned earlier that Duterte's SONA will likely last around 35 minutes, which will be mostly about his personal message to the people. Filipinos channeled their creativity once again as they post about the rainy weather. Leslie Longboan tells us why.
If the bad weather flooded some streets in the country, witty posts have swamped the social media once again as Filipinos post their experiences from the cold weather to class suspension. This post of a student went viral when she decided to wash herself on the pool after getting wet from the rain. These students, on the other hand, caught netizens' attention after this unfortunate thing happened. A man enjoying himself from a pool of flood water in their house also attracted millions of views. These posts just show how resilient Filipinos are and how they look on the bright side of every situation. However, the serious effects of bad weather and flood to people and to health should always be kept in mind. Leslie Longboan, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Up next on Y News. Philippine Marine contingents endure physical and mental capacity tests as they embark on stress shooting drills in the largest international maritime exercises in Hawaii. The Department of Justice dismisses appeals filed by the parents of law student Horacio Acho Castillo and 2 fraternity members accused in the fatal hazing case. And police arrest a female illegal recruiter promising jobs in Japan. Thank you for keeping me company in the first part of Y News. More reasons behind the stories with Angelo Castro III and William Thio after this quick break. I'm Rheena Villamor-Camara. Good evening.
Welcome back to Y News. We pick up from where Rheena Villamor-Camara left off. I'm Angelo Castro III. Here are the headlines. Bicameral Conference Committee expects to release soon the final version of the proposed Bangsamoro Basic Law as deliberation nears completion. Malacanang contradicts Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Ernesto Perña and insists that the shift to federalism will not harm the economy. And the Philippine Navy confirms that a Chinese research vessel is currently docked in Davao. Good evening. Malacanang reiterates that the shift to a federalism government would not have any adverse effects on the economy. This is after the country's top economist cautioned that federalism could affect government finances. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque says the palace has already clarified the matter with Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Ernesto Perña. During a media interview, Perña said that federalism could disrupt the administration's infrastructure projects and the country's fiscal situation. Roque says that under federalism, the budget would remain the same as national projects would be devolved and transferred to the internal revenue allotment of local government units. These projects include maintenance of barangay roads, bridges, water supply services, barangay and daycare centers, among others. President Duterte is expected to endorse to Congress the draft federal charter during his SONA on July 23. Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III still enjoys the trust and confidence of President Rodrigo Duterte, despite calls for his resignation amid corruption allegations. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque says Bello still has Duterte's support in spite of issues linking him to extortion, his alleged refusal to assist a Filipino worker, and for asking fees for the issuance of an OFW ID card, which is supposed to be given for free. Roque, however, is leaving it up to the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission to investigate the said allegations against Bello. The Philippine Navy confirms that a Chinese research vessel is currently docked in Davao City. However, the naval officials assure there is no need to worry about the purpose of this visit. Diane Ventura tells us why.
Chinese research and surveillance ship U113 dropped anchor at the Sasa Wharf in Davao City last Monday night. But Naval Forces Eastern Mindanao Chief Commander Ramil Roberto Enriquez quickly clarifies that the Chinese ship just made a simple port call for a routine replenishment of supplies and provisions. He adds the vessel secured a permit before docking.
If you ask me what was unusual, nothing extraordinary. The Chinese embassy in Manila requested for diplomatic clearance.
Admiral Captain Enriquez also emphasizes that providing supplies for the vessels of neighboring countries is in accordance with the international laws and agreement.
I was informed that as of July 16, when Yuan-13 entered Philippine waters here in Davao Gulf, it has already the necessary clearances issued by the Department of Foreign Affairs. Okay, this can be confirmed by ASEC Ferrer.
Enriquez also notes that the Chinese crew chose to dock in Davao Gulf as this is the most convenient route to the Pacific Ocean. The Yuan-13 vessel will stay at the Davao port until Thursday morning. Last month, 2 Chinese military cargo planes landed in Davao International Airport for refueling. Diane Ventura, UNTV News and Rescue, Davao City.
The Philippine Marines undergo a test in physical and mental capacity as they join the stress shooting drills of the Rim of the Pacific exercises in Hawaii. RJ Alavaso tells us why.
Filipino soldiers face stress firing drills together with other Marines from Chile, South Korea, and United States in the ongoing Rim of the Pacific exercises. Armed with M16 rifles, soldiers needed to knock out each target in the firing range by using the least amount of ammunition in the fastest possible time. Their training regarding gun handling, strategies, and other taught by their facilitator are tested throughout the day.
We've been hand in hand doing all of our training from military operations and urban terrain all the way to physical training, so working out. So it's really been great.
Prior to the activity, the Marine needed to perform squats and push-ups, while in the actual firing, they needed to accomplish standing, kneeling, and prone positions. Team face harder challenge with each level until the top 2 teams meet for the finals. According to the Philippine contingent, being able to communicate in English and about the experiences they have are advantages despite the lack of arms because of their counterparts dependent on them with instruction from the facilitators. Meanwhile, being part of the RIMPAC 18 being held in Hawaii from June 27 to August 2 became a morale booster for the Philippine Marines.
The present atmosphere of the Philippine Troops is high morale. We are just also, we are all provided here. We are all inspired.
UNTV is the only Philippine media to witness the actual exercises of our Marines in the Big Islands of Hawaii since yesterday. According to our soldier, they are happy for the full support of our government with this kind of opportunity. Meanwhile, the Philippine Marines will have to face new exercises such as mortar firing and other drills. RJ Alabazo, UNTV News and Rescue, Hawaii, USA.
The Department of Justice dismisses 4 procedural lapses, 3 appeals connected to the criminal charges filed against 2 Aegis Juris Fraternity members over the fatal hazing of UST law student Horacio Acho Castillo III last year. In a resolution dated July 5, the DOJ junked the petition of Acho's parents, Carmina and Horacio Castillo, to charge UST Law Dean Nilo Divina for late filing. The agency also denies the petition for review filed by fraternity members Marcelino Bagdang and Ralph Trangia for non-compliance with requirements. Both parties are set to undergo trials in Manila Regional Trial Court, Branch 20 on July 24. Tourist arrivals in the country remain high despite the closure of the Boracay Island, according to the Department of Tourism. Here's why from Charlie Barredo.
Foreign visitors in the country still grew in spite of the temporary closure of one of the country's prime destinations, the Boracay Island, in April. Data from the Department of Tourism show that in the first 5 months of 2018, the Philippines saw a 9 to 10% climb in the tourist arrivals. And though there is only under 1% growth in foreign arrivals a month after the Boracay closure, Tourism Undersecretary Bom Benson says this is still a positive report.
Well, we just saw the report, the official report for May 2018. And despite the closure of Boracay on April 26, well, we're happy that the month-on-month performance of May is still positive.
The tourism official also stresses that the agency is doing everything to ensure the reopening of Boracay after its 6-month shutdown for rehabilitation. The agency is also making sure that the hotels and lodging establishments in Boracay will comply with the requirements, secure accreditation, and conduct manpower training programs, and to come up with intensive marketing and promotions. But according to activist and part-time tour guide Carlos Celdran, the closure of Boracay did not help at all in the tourist arrivals in Intramuros.
And we definitely felt the crunch here in Intramuros with the closure of Boracay because nobody really comes to Manila as its destination unless you're for business. Most of the clients that we get here in Intramuros are here on their way to Boracay.
He also notes that if there are any increases in the number of tourists, these are just mostly Chinese.
I like to think of them as hit-and-run tourism. These guys get off their boat, they come to Fort Santiago, they take pictures, and then they go back on the boat and eat their lunch there and have their dinner there and move on to the next country.
Celdran also adds the arrival of Chinese tourists has not been exactly beneficial to the area.
The only people who make the money off this, and good for them, are the bus operators that take them from the boat to here. Other than that, nobody else gets a touch of the revenue.
Charlie Barreto, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Police operatives nab a female in Quezon City following complaints on illegal recruitment. Leia Ilagan tells us why.
The PNP Criminal Investigation and Detection Group reports the arrest of a female illegal recruiter promising jobs in Japan. The suspect, identified as Edna Richardo, was nabbed at EDSA Corner, Quezon Avenue on the act of receiving the 20,000 pesos budel money from the victim. According to CIDG Chief Police Superintendent Roque Merdihia Jr., Richardo was reported to be demanding 50,000 to 100,000 pesos from her victims in exchange for jobs as factory workers for a known shoe brand in Japan.
Common friends ang nag-recommenda sa isang, hindi opisina, bangketa o isang karinderya lang nakita-kita, naniwala sa yung referral ito, kasi may kakilala, nakapagpapalis papuntang Japan, mabilisan, sigurado, ligtas. At ito namang mga biktima ay kaagad na nagtiwala.
The victim, who requested anonymity, recalled one of their co-applicants proceeded to the Ninoy Aquino International Airport allegedly to meet Richardo, who was supposed to hand the travel documents for the victim's departure, but Richardo was a no-show.
Hindi pa kami nagduda kasi nakikipag-communicate pa sila eh. Tapos marami silang pinakita sa amin na ganun nga, marami na daw sila napaalis.
Merdihia says Richardo was enticing applicants with high salary and free accommodation in Japan. She will face charges of illegal recruitment and staffa for swindling. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue, Camp Crame.
A farmers group storms the Department of Agrarian Reform office in Quezon City in the wake of its alleged no camp-out policy. Kathy Maglalang reports.
In spite of the downpour, the members of Dakilusan para sa Reformang Agraryo at Katarungang Panlipunan still thronged to the Department of Agrarian Reform to protest its alleged policy against camping out in its grounds. The president of the Federation of Sicogon Island Farmers and Fisherfolks Association, Raul Ramos, claims the agency recently banned them from staying in the vicinity during rallies, citing security and cleanliness issues. He says the advisory was stated in a letter that was signed by Virgilio Acuña, DAR's Director for Administrative Services.
Ginagawa lang nilang recreation yung mga lugar dyan. Ang dormitory nila ay ginagawa lang nilang bakasyonan na kanilang pamilya. Mga walang yan.
He further claims that since DAR Secretary John Castraciones assumed office in March 2018, they were no longer allowed to camp out in the area. He is also lamenting the department's alleged lack of accommodation to farmer protesters coming from far-flung provinces to seek resolution to their land claims. However, Attorney David Ero, DAR Undersecretary for Policy, Planning and Research Office, denies they are implementing a no camp-out policy, adding that this is just a miscommunication.
Walang ganong policy. Ang gusto nga ni Secretary, lahat ng mga gustong makipag-usap sa departamento, lalo yung mga stakeholders, mga farmers, dapat i-accommodate lahat sila.
Attorney Ero says the farmers are welcome to stay in the grounds, but he reminds them to have proper coordination to concerned offices. DAR also assures the public it continues to perform its mandate to assist the farmers who are facing problems involving land disputes and reforms. Kathy Maglalang, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Up next on Y News. Australian scientists develop world first melanoma detection blood test. Chile issues orange alert following a seismic activity at Chilean volcano. And the first ever driverless shuttle debuts in New York. And those are the reasons behind the stories in the second part of our newscast. Y News returns with William Thio. I'm Angelo Castro III. Good evening.
To complete the most significant news for this day, Y News continues. Here are the top stories. The Bicameral Conference Committee expects to release soon the final version of the proposed Bangsamoro Basic Law after reconciling all of its contentious provisions. Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon is also confident that the BBL provisions will pass legal scrutiny, save for one. Nel Maribohok is at the Senate to tell us why. Nel?
Yes, good evening. After the sixth hearing of the bicameral conference held today in the Senate, they are now finalizing the proposed Bangsamoro Basic Law. And the Senate, represented by Senator Mig Subiri, is now approved the BICAM report. And we are just awaiting the approval of the House contingents. The members of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, or the BTC, and stakeholders are now witnessing the conclusion of the deliberation of what they call is the unified version of the BBL. The law will create the Bangsamoro region that will replace the current autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, or ARMM. According to Senator Franklin Drilon, one of the members of the Senate BICAM contingent, the proposal enumerates the 55 powers given to the Bangsamoro government. These include fiscal autonomy, which will authorize the Bangsamoro government to prepare and decide where to allocate their budget. The national government also mandates the Bangsamoro region to submit annual block grants up to 70 billion pesos. The Bangsamoro government also has the power to create its government-owned and controlled corporations, or GOCC, and to control free ports and economic zones. They can also impose taxes that are different from the taxes imposed by the national government. Senator Drilon believes the BBL will pass the constitutional scrutiny, save for a sensitive provision that will probably encounter impediment before the Supreme Court.
But I do not discount na ito'y dadalhin sa Korte Suprema, lalo na yung issue ng parliamentary form of government.
Drilon also says that the passage of the BBL will prove that the country does not need any charter change.
Maliwanag na hindi po kailangan ang federal system to achieve what we want to do.
Will Representative House Majority Leader Rudy Fariñas is currently deliberating his final remarks before the approval of the House contingent on the BICAM report. So we're just a minute away for the approval of the BICAM report for the passage of the BBL. The Congress looks to ratify the controversial bill on July 23rd, or during the opening of the regular sessions of the 17th Congress and the day of President Duterte's State of the Nation address. And that is our update here in the Senate. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Nel Maribohok, live at the Senate of the Philippines. Meanwhile, the Department of Health prepares for the expected rise in the number of dengue and leptospirosis cases following days of non-stop downpour that inundated some areas. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III visited some flooded areas in Quezon City earlier to distribute medications and to give lecture on the symptoms and prevention of the said diseases. Duque also reminds the public to seek medical consultation when symptoms appear instead of self-medicating. Based on the DOH report from January 1 to January 14, 2018, leptospirosis cases has breached the 600 mark with 68 deaths, while dengue cases reached 8,000, which is 17% higher than the cases reported in the same period of 2017. DOH has previously declared an outbreak on leptospirosis in 29 villages in Metro Manila.
This rainy season of the last 2-3 days, we expect again an upsurge in the number of lepto and dengue cases. It's always alarming if we have deaths, so certainly because we have reported deaths.
Local authorities are still searching for an 11-year-old boy who fell into the Tulyahan River after he was electrocuted on Tuesday night. The boy, named Jan Darwin Vargas, was walking through the floodwaters in Barangay 164, Caloocan City, when he accidentally came across a live power cable. The parents of the boy are calling on the public to notify the local authorities through the number 330-5443 should they find his body. Following the incident, other families near Tulyahan River have started to evacuate to safer grounds, realizing the danger of staying near the river, especially during rainy season. In other news, militant groups are now gearing up for the planned staging of massive protests during President Rodrigo Duterte's State of the Nation address on Monday. The protesters will hold this year's anti-SONA rally near the St. Peter's Church along Commonwealth Avenue, as this is much wider than the IBP Road, which served as their venue last year. They plan to kick off the anti-SONA protests at 2 in the afternoon and will end by 6:30 in the evening. The Philippine National Police have announced earlier the deployment of more than over 7,000 personnel on SONA Day. It will also send its Civil Disturbance Management Group instead of placing barbed wires and container vans in the protest areas. The MMDA, meanwhile, will open a zipper lane along Commonwealth Avenue to manage the expected buildup of vehicles.
Nasa pag-uusap at nasa agreement ang magandang pagdaraos ng SONA natin, at I'm very much confident na yun ang mangyari. But just the same, we are prepared.
The shift to a federalism government would not adversely harm the economy, according to Malacanang. This is in response to the remarks made by Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Ernesto Pernia on the possible effects of federalism to government finances. Pernia also said that federalism could disrupt the administration's infrastructure projects and the country's fiscal situation. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque says the palace has already clarified the matter with Pernia, adding that under federalism, the budget would remain the same as national projects would be devolved and transferred to the internal revenue allotment of local government units. President Duterte is expected to endorse the draft federal charter to Congress during his SONA on July 23. The Philippine Navy confirms that a Chinese research and surveillance ship docked in Sasa Wharf in Davao City last Monday night. However, an officer from the Naval Forces Eastern Mindanao Command quickly clarifies that the Chinese ship just made a simple port call for a routine replenishment of supplies and provisions. The Chinese crew allegedly decided to dock in Davao Gulf until Thursday morning, as this is the most convenient route to the Pacific Ocean. The naval commander also emphasizes that providing supplies for the vessels of neighboring countries is in accordance with the international laws.
So if you ask me what was unusual, nothing extraordinary. The Chinese embassy in Manila requested for diplomatic clearance.
And for the news abroad, here's Noel Poliarco live from Toronto, Canada. Good morning, Noel.
Good evening, William. Former U.S. President Barack Obama urged the world to resist cynicism over the rise of a strongman in an apparent reference to populist leaders who hold power in several countries.
Look around. Strongman politics are ascendant, suddenly, whereby elections and some pretense of democracy are maintained, the form of it, but those in power seek to undermine every institution or norm that gives democracy meaning.
During his speech in Johannesburg to mark the 100th anniversary of the birth of Nelson Mandela, Obama also warns people of the dangers of fake news.
People just make stuff up. Politicians have always lied, but it used to be if you caught them lying, they'd be like, oh man. Now they just keep on lying.
British Prime Minister Theresa May narrowly avoids a defeat in Parliament at the hands of pro-EU lawmakers from her own party on Tuesday, fending off a rebellion that threatened to worsen a crisis over her Brexit strategy. Parliament voted 307 to 301 against an amendment to trade legislation that would require the government to try to negotiate a customs union arrangement with the EU if by January 21, 2019, it had failed to negotiate a deal with the bloc that offered frictionless free trade agreement or free trade for goods. The narrow victory is May's third this week, underlining the difficulty she faces in passing legislation on one of the most divisive and important decisions in modern British history, with only a minority government and a party at war with itself. At least 13 people were killed in an ambush in Oaxaca, Mexico, while in Chile, an orange alert has been issued following a recent minor seismic activity at Chilean volcano complex. Beverly Saison tells us why.
In Mexico, more than a dozen people were killed in the Sierra of Oaxaca in southern Mexico on Tuesday over a reported decades-long land dispute with a neighboring community. According to Oaxaca's Attorney General's office, 13 people in the town of Santa Maria Ecatepec were killed by residents from the San Lucas Jicotepec community. Media reported residents from Santa Maria Ecatepec had traveled to the disputed land when they were reportedly ambushed. State police from Oaxaca have taken over responsibility for this restive region to restore law and order. Meanwhile, the Spanish humanitarian boat Open Arms rescued on Tuesday the bodies of a migrant woman and a child dead at sea lying on the wreckage of a dinghy. The non-governmental organization said the Libyan Coast Guard had rescued some 158 migrants from the deflating dinghy but left the bodies out at sea on the wreckage. A third person who had been left on the dinghy was found alive and pulled to safety by Open Arms personnel. Italy's far-right Interior Minister Matteo Salvini is leading a high-profile campaign to exclude humanitarian rescue ships from Italian ports. He argues that European countries should find a way to block the migrants before they leave Africa or send boats with asylum seekers back to the ports where they came from, including to Libya's harbors. In Chile has placed the Nevados de Chillán volcano complex on orange alert after minor seismic activity in the peaks of the volcano during recent days suggests the possibility of a major eruption. As a result, Chilean authorities have been deploying emergency officials and installed checkpoints surrounding the volcano. Although the area is largely rural, it is a popular tourist destination with luxury hotels dotting the mountainous area. Since 1861, Chillán has erupted about a dozen times. Beverly Saison, UNTV News and Rescue.
And those are the news from the other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you very much, Noel Poliarco, live from Toronto, Canada. Australian researchers have developed a blood test they billed as a world first to easily spot skin cancer. Here's why from Nina Bascon.
Australian scientists say they have developed a blood test to detect melanoma in its early stages. The test, billed as a world first, is designed to make it easier to spot the skin cancer before it becomes fatal, according to researchers. Currently, doctors rely on skin examinations and biopsies to detect melanoma, which can spread quickly.
Well, it's the first time that autoantibodies have been used to diagnose melanoma. So that in itself is exciting because we've shown that we can do it, and that's the breakthrough. The fact that we get to 80% is very encouraging, and the next step is to get to over 90% accuracy, where we feel that at that point it will be really clinically very useful.
Researchers believe the blood test could provide more accurate results than the human eye and save many lives. Developed by scientists at Edith Cowan University, the test picks up melanoma by recognizing autoantibodies produced by the body to combat the cancer's early growth.
It's very tricky, particularly in people who have over 100 moles. How do you do a whole skin examination in 10 minutes that you have as a clinician? And so you have to pick the one that's of concern. This will provide them with an additional tool to do this at very early stages and get that tumour out.
In a trial involving about 200 people, half of whom had the cancer, the test was successful in 81.5% of cases. It will now undergo clinical trials to take place within 3 years in a bid to improve its accuracy to 90%. Researchers hope it could be approved for use within 5 years. Nina Bascon, UNTV News and Rescue, Australia.
A first-ever driverless shuttle debuts in New York's Times Square. Its designer believes that riding a self-driving bus will provide an opportunity to people. Leslie Longbowen tells us why.
The boxy electric bus bounced along a 150-yard section of Broadway near 48th Street on Tuesday. It is fitted with special high-tech sensors, but it has no driver at the wheel.
A lot of people do not want to be driving their car, finding a parking space, and then walking around the city. They'd like to be able to just come and go. And that's really where I think young people, really the whole country is going right now, is the opportunity to be in a driverless vehicle.
The low-speed shuttle is designed for airports, college campuses, theme parks, or downtown urban centers. Anywhere that a 20-mile-an-hour or less vehicle will work for pedestrians.
Coast is trying to carve out the low-speed space. There are a lot of folks putting a lot of money into going 50 miles an hour, 60, 70, 80. That's going to be a lot harder to do. We believe that the low-speed space we'll be able to get into quickly and be able to get operational quickly as well.
The vehicle can fit up to 20 people with its seats taken out. While Coast Autonomous is just a year old, it has been working on its self-driving technology for 15 years and expects to deploy its first fleets by next year. Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue.
And those are the reasons behind the news July 18, 2018. On behalf of Rheena, Villamor-Camara, and Angelo Castro III, I am William Thio. Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Good evening.